everyone, Michelle Lupton here to show you how I made this card for the latest Fusion Challenge. I hope you've all been joining in with our Fusion Challenge blog challenges. They're awesome fun. You get to choose between a sketch and a photo inspiration. So today I've gone with the photo inspiration, which had some gorgeous flowers and a beautiful bouquet with various different pinks and very, very pale green. So anyway, I've used this stamp that is from W+9, and it's just absolutely stunning. It's basically a little bouquet of ranunculus, and what I'm doing is I've used some watercolour paper, watercolour cardstock that is, from Canson, and right now you can see that I'm prepping it with my EK Success powder tool. That's just to make sure that when I stamp with this Versamark that I've just inked up this stamp with, and then I put the embossing powder on, hopefully the embossing powder will only go where the ink is and won't sort of stick by static to any of the rest of the cardstock. So now I'm just flipping this around in my MISTI so that I can stamp this pretty much in the same location but in the opposite corner of this watercolour piece. So now I'm using my Hero Arts clear embossing powder. I actually tossed up whether to use white embossing powder or clear embossing powder here, but I decided that the clear just give a bit of a softer look, and that's what I was going with for this card. Is just a whole lot of, beautiful soft colours on each other. Now, for this card, I've also got a piece of vellum across the front. I'm using this Averiel stamp set, this Congratulations stamp set, because I thought this would make a really good wedding card. So, I've already cut the piece of vellum. It's around about 1 inch wide, and So I've just put the stamp in place and it pulled up the vellum, so I'm just putting it flat again. Now I'm just inking this up again with my Versamark ink pad. And I'm going to be embossing this with embossing powder that's new to me. I'm not quite sure how long it's been out actually, but it's certainly new to me. It's from Simon Says Stamp, and it's a rose gold colour. It's just beautiful. It's just, I can see I'm going to be using it a lot in the future because I just love it. Now, it's a very fine embossing powder, and even though I prepped this piece of vellum with my anti-static powder tool, I'm still having to use my little dry paintbrush to just remove tiny little flecks of the embossing powder where it's stuck, where it shouldn't have stuck. But that's okay. It wasn't too bad. But you just need to be aware of that when you're using ultrafine embossing powder. So I made sure I heated up my heat gun well before I brought it to the vellum to help prevent the vellum from warping. Now I've got some distress ink. So I've got sponge sugar, worn lipstick, tattered rose, abandoned coral, bundled sage, and milled lavender. So these are the colours. I thought these colours sort of matched, at least the pinks and the green, matched the photo inspiration for Fusion. So there was sort of more of a coral pink, and then there was a more dusky pink, and then there was a more mid-toned pink. So I went for a whole lot of different pinky tones here. Now, when I'm painting this, you can see I'm actually holding the piece up. The only reason for that is I had to be able to see where the embossing powder was, or where the embossing was on the image, so that I didn't go outside the lines at least too much. And usually I do that by just leaning over. But when I did that, you couldn't see a thing because I just cast a shadow right across my desk. I don't have sort of particular lamps over my desk when I'm videoing my cards. I just have the overhead light in the room, which tends to be bright enough most of the time, but not when I lean over. So that's the only reason why I'm actually holding this up. And a couple of times I had to actually put it down while I was drying it with the heat tool, just to make sure the water didn't pool up in particular areas. I quite like the idea of the water pooling up, but not all at the bottom. Now what I did, I started with the abandoned coral, then I added some of the spun sugar, and I decided I needed some tattered rose on top of the spun sugar, just to give a little bit of variation in the colour and make it a little bit more subtle pink. Now I'm adding the worn lipstick to all the smaller flowers. And I made sure that I heat set that before I added the bundled sage to the leaves. So you'll notice that I've sprayed some water into my distress ink on my craft mat, but I kind of kept some of it with just ink and some of it with water, so that I could just dip my paintbrush in to either the watery ink or the straight ink, depending on how intense I wanted it at that particular place on the watercolour piece. Now with this very, very pale lavender colour, I'm just using it in the background, so I watered it down a fair bit, and you can't honestly really tell really easily that it's actually purple in the background, but it just gives a bit of a shadow. And then I found that some bits, the colour was just a bit intense on the edge, so I just added some water to the edges to sort of dilute it out, so I didn't get a harsh line of colour around each of those sort of bouquets. So there's my watercolouring done. Now I'm using this piece of fog cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I actually got this from my friend Anne-Marie. Hi, Anne-Marie. I was over at her place just the other day to have afternoon tea, and we were talking about cardstock, as you do, and she mentioned she had some, and I said, oh, I really want to try that cardstock. And she said, well, I've got some, you can have a few pieces. So she just gave me a few pieces, and I immediately went home and made this card. So I am seriously going to have to buy a whole lot of this cardstock, because I am just in love. It's just beautiful. Now what I'm doing now, I decided that flower in the bottom left-hand corner was a bit too bright. So I just painted over it with water and then mopped up some of the excess colour. You can do that with distress inks. They're fabulous. It's so forgiving. I just love distress inks. They just let you do whatever you want to do, and it's all good. So now I'm just getting the placement of this sentiment right, folding my piece of vellum around the back. So by attaching it this way, I don't have any adhesive underneath the vellum on the front of the card. So there's no chance of any adhesive showing through underneath that vellum, which is always good. Now at this point, I thought, well, I want to raise it up a little bit, but I wanted it not to get damaged if I happen to be posting this in the mail, which I don't know whether I will or not, but anyway. So I'm doing a Jennifer Maguire trick, and I'm using fun foam underneath, so that if it does get a bit squished, it'll get squished evenly across that fun foam, and you won't sort of see little squishy bits, little lines where like stripes of foam tape or dimensional adhesive go, because it's all one layer. Now to get it nice and straight, which I just didn't do, I stuck it down and then went, oh my god, that's so crooked, so try again. That's a good thing about this tape runner that I use, which is from a brand called Balloon. It's really forgiving, and only it really sticks really well once you've actually pressed it down pretty well and left it there for a little while. Then it'll stick really well. But if you make a mistake and decide you've made the mistake immediately and you want to change it, you can, so it's really good. Now, I of course had to add some sequins to this. It just didn't look quite right without the sequins added to it. So these are just sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh. I just added 3. As I didn't want to go overboard with the sequins. It didn't really need much because it's already got the shine from that beautiful embossing powder. So that's it. So here's the 2 cards side by side. I'll just grab the other one. And you can see they're very similar, slightly different in colours, slightly different in the placement of the flowers. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you go to the Fusion Challenge blog and enter your own card into that challenge. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.